Howdy folks, Andy Gamer Muzzer here, and yeah, back on Elite Dangerous, and it's Law 2 and I with Drew Wagar, and we're coming out to Teorge, and we are doing things about Raxxla tonight. Should be very interesting, very interesting. Raxxla being sought after in this game since 1984 and never been found. I do think many people are getting close though, but yeah, it shouldn't be long, so we're just going around and visiting the listening posts in this system. But this is where the Lot 2 is starting tonight, so as soon as Drew comes on, we'll be straight on it. Drew's music has started, so I'll wait for him to come on. Just while you go around and collect more of these listening post logs. So, I'll be back once Drew has finished. Enjoy.
And good evening, Commanders. Now, I do have apologies straight off the bat. I have a green screen malfunction. About 10 seconds before coming on stream, my screen collapsed, so the entire universe has come to a halt. So apologies for that, but other than that, we're good. So weird things are already happening on the Raxxla stream. Greetings to everybody online. Thank you very much for popping on. I do appreciate the company. So apologies for the rather low-tech background I have today. We'll get straight back into the game. We'll continue now. That's the explanation for it. Is that my green screen, as you can see, is my trusty green screen is here, but it's no longer attached to the roof. There are no secrets behind me unless there's eagle-eyed of you kind of looking. What's on this shelf? What's on this shelf? Is it the secret of Raxxla? No, I'm afraid nothing that exciting. But there we go. So that's the reality of my half of the study that I have here. So that's the actual inside of my house, which is, as you can see, a little bit of a mess. But there's all sorts of weird stuff going on. But anyway, welcome one and all. Welcome one and all. So let's get into the game. So for those of you who are wondering where I am, we are in the Teorge system tonight. We are in the Teorge system. Trianguli is next week, I think. Yeah, so and we're off to learn about Thargoids and Inra, I think, next week, if I remember my own talk correctly. But tonight is all about the grand mystery of Elite. Unsolved, of course, unsolved. Yeah, so zoom and enhance on the bookcase, see what you can see. Sort of Miami CSI style. Yeah, actually, the books that there's a bit of Tolkien, there's a bit of Asimov. There's all sorts of good stuff. It's mostly science fiction, okay? And you'll also notice I'm a big car fan, so there's a few car models on the shelf as well, clocks and all sorts of stuff. But that's got nothing to do with what we're doing tonight, okay? Now, make yourself, make your way. If you're in game, make your way to the Teorge system. That's Teorge. Not too far from where we were hanging out last time. I am currently in orbit, as you can possibly see, in orbit of Teorge 3C. I'm at one of the listening posts in the system. So so there we go. And tonight we're going to be talking about which private group? My private group, the Drew Wagar private group. So after after having done this law tour for like nearly 2 months now, people are still joining up, which is great. Lovely to see you all. I've got wing requests. Now who's Alan Quartermain? Now that sounds like the kind of guy I need to be in my wing. So let's try that. So if you want to join me in there, then feel free. I am in one of these listening posts, the POI there. Not quite sure which one. It just says listening post. I've got a few people here. We'll move around. Bust about Raxxla, and just get the information up. Nope, Gazalog 2 is where I am. So if you can find that, that's where I currently am. There's a few people jumping into the instance. There we go. That's fantastic. So join me there. Teorge is so yeah. So good question. Why are we in Teorge? Raxxla's in the bookcase. Love it. Raxxla. Well, okay. So some of you will know. Some of you will know all about Raxxla in the first place. Okay. Now some of you won't. Now we need to set the scene here. What is Raxxla? It's a very good question to be asking, and let's hope I don't go mysteriously offline in the middle of this stream, okay? Because that has happened before. The last time I talked about Raxxla on one of these streams, I had a power cut, which was very suspicious. So who knows, right? Maybe there are people watching, you know, maybe the Dark Wheel. So all sorts of stuff. So what is Raxxla? Okay, what is Raxxla? Now you have to go back in time. Now this is, and I've shown it to you before. Let me just pop it up again. This is actually going to show up better today because I haven't got the green screen on. This is my copy of the original Elite for the ZX Spectrum, which I have shown on stream a number of times. This is from 1985, and it's a year later than the BBC version, but the interior contents are very, very similar. Those original games from 1984, 1985 came with all sorts of interesting things. Okay, so you had a manual. So games in those days came with a manual. Look at it, it's quite chunky for a computer game manual. Right? It's full of stuff. It's really, really good. It came with a ship identification chart, so you could go out and hopefully identify. The camera will focus on that. There you go. All the different types of ships that were in the original game, you could go out and identify. Yes, I know they all look like small bits of cheese, but they are actually sufficiently different. You can identify them. A ship identification chart. Some instructions on how to get through the copy protection system that was on the original game. Keyboard overlays. Do you remember when those were a thing? You used to put those over your computer, and of course in here the original cassette for the game, because games loaded off cassette in those days. And this thing up here is called a lens lock, which has just fallen out. That's a lens lock. That is a very, very early form of copy protection, which is a prism that you would put on the screen, look through, and have to type a code, otherwise your game would fail to load. So all that stuff came in the original box. With one other thing. This is my original copy of a book called The Dark Wheel. And you can see it's written by a chap by the name of Robert Holdstock. Now, if you've been following my stream all the way along, you'll know that my Cobra Mark III in-game tonight is the Robert Holdstock. It's named in honour of this chap. Now, Robert Holdstock was a science fiction author, and he, back in 1984, was a relatively young man. A new science fiction author, and he was given the opportunity to write a novella for a computer game. Apparently an author friend of his basically said, these guys have approached me, a proper author, to write about a computer game. Now I've turned it down, but you're just starting out, so why don't you have a go? That's how the story goes, apparently. So Robert Holdstock wrote a novella for Elite, and he actually also wrote quite a lot of the manual that went into the original game, and he injected effectively most of the lore that starts off the whole of the Elite canon. So Robert Holdstock is the man who we owe a huge debt to in the universe of Elite for starting off the lore. So he is the he's kind of the originator of this side of the environment. Now, obviously, David Braben, Ian Bell wrote the game. Okay, now they wrote the game. They wrote, they created the Cobra Mark III. They created the universe. They created procedural generation, all that kind of good stuff. But Robert Holdstock injected the story. Okay, Robert Holdstock injected the story, and it's from him. It is from Robert Holdstock that we get both the Dark Wheel itself as a legend and Raxxla. Now I'll read you. I need to read you this. This is how the legend starts. Some of you may have, but some of you will have read this. This is available online. It is arguably a copyright book, but the copyright belongs to an organisation that no longer exists. Um, and and it's available, completely free online. So I'm not breaking anything by talking to you about this. But the first mention of Raxxla is in this novella. And basically, just to set your scene, there's the young hero is a young lad by the name of Alex Ryder, and his father's taken him on a quick jaunt in a very small spacecraft, and they hyperspace from Lave. And when they come out of hyperspace, they're ambushed by a Cobra Mark III. They are ambushed by a Cobra Mark III, and the Cobra Mark III is a very heavily military armed ship, and it attacks them. Basically, they're outmatched. Jason Ryder, the dad, pushes his son Alex into an escape pod, and effectively pulls the eject on him. And I'm just going to read from that point, okay? At the same moment of the Avalonia's death, Alex Ryder found himself struck by his father. The Remlock mask, another thing added in by the Remlock mask, forced into place about his eyes, nose and mouth, and then his whole body was physically manhandled into the escape pod. The ship shuddered and screamed, fuel spilled into the void. Father and son faced each other for a last moment, each watching the other through a mist of tears and confusion. I don't understand, Alex screamed, above the noise of the dying ship. Who's trying to kill us? Raxxla, Jason says. Remember Raxxla. And then as he pushes Alex back into the cramped escape pod, he shouted, Remember me, Alex. I wouldn't have wished this on you. Raxxla. The escape pods jettisoned. Alex tumbled. The sleek white shape of his father's ship was above him. And then just white light, white heat, and cold space. In a second it had gone. His ship, his father, a part of his life, obliterated by a single burst of fire from the hovering shape of the pirate. And that is how the legend of Raxxla starts. In this book, The Dark Wheel. Now you may be asking, okay, so, good, right? Was it in the original game? Was it in the original game? Pretty much no. We can be fairly certain it wasn't in the original game. A, there wasn't space for it, and B, it's not all that hard, as you might expect, to data mine a game that is only 48k in size. Okay, there just isn't anywhere it can hide. So Raxxla wasn't in the original game. It was a lore thing added to kind of give the story of the original game something to expand it. Sometimes that's what lore does. And we've had complaints recently, of course. If it's not in the game, it shouldn't be mentioned. Kind of, that kind of dilemma with fluff articles and things on Gauntlet and all that kind of good stuff. Now, that kind of wasn't the same back in those days, but it didn't stop us going looking. Okay, I've had emails, even relatively recently, in the last sort of 5 years since Elite Dangerous became a thing. Of people saying, I remember looking for Raxxla in those original games. I spent years looking through all of the systems in all of the galaxies, looking for Raxxla. So this story has a purpose. Now, Raxxla exists in the universe of Elite from 1984. It isn't mentioned in the second game, Frontier Elite 2. It isn't mentioned in Frontier First Encounters, which is the third game, games that I've introduced on this stream before. But it has cropped up in Elite Dangerous. It has cropped up in Elite Dangerous. Now, before we kind of get into some of that sort of stuff, why am I here in the Teorge system? Why am I here in the Teorge system? Now, last week we were in the Isla system, which is also very important to the Elite Dangerous lore. Now, Teorge is also quite important. The reason Teorge is quite important because it was originally in the Elite lore a clone world, actually something that's actually very illegal in the universe of the original Elite. You weren't supposed to be, clones were illegal, and they're still frowned upon in the Elite Dangerous backstory. But one of the original characters in this book, The Dark Wheel, comes from here. Now there are two people in the story of note, really. Alex Ryder, the young lad we've just mentioned, and a lady called Alicia Fields. And she is a clone. She's a clone from Teorge. And that's the reason we're here, is the quest for Raxxla, if you like, starts at Teorge. But it also loops in Teorge, because Teorge is a place where one of the characters comes from. We believe Alex Rider himself probably came from Lave. So we're in that old world's region of space. This is where the legends start. So again, just to show you that. I've got some. Hang on a minute. I've got a few last-minute friend requests coming in. There we go. Ooh, just one. That's good. Hopefully that'll sort that out. And if I go to the galaxy map, you will notice we are here in the old world system. We have Lave. Let me just go and get that. Because Teorge is slightly off axis for the rest of these systems. Lave, Zeance, Teorge, Deso, Leasty, all these places are familiar to those who played the original games. And Teorge is one of those as well. It's not very, very far away from this area of space. So this area of space is kind of where all the elite Raxxla Dark Wheel legends begin from, as far as we can tell. This region of space. In the Codex, now the Codex is a relatively recent thing. Okay, the Codex is a relatively recent thing. It wasn't there for most of Elite Dangerous. It is relatively recent, and it's been populated relatively recently. And some of the information in it is at odds with some of the information that has gone before. So we'll talk a little bit about that as well. But in the Codex, there's a few interesting things for those of you who've been following along all the way through this lore tour. If we go to the knowledge base here and click on Raxxla, because there's an entry. Now this is interesting in itself, okay? This is interesting in itself. We have only 10 entries in the Codex in the knowledge base area. And this is interesting enough to me that there's 10 things in the code. Now there should, I suppose, arguably be thousands. Okay, you know, it's a galaxy full of information, but you know, it's a game. You know, we have the Empire, we have the Federation, we have the Alliance, we have the Thargoids, we have the Guardians, we have notable individuals who are mostly power play people. We have significant corporations in the lore. We have Colonia, which is mostly a player-driven thing, to be honest. Good to see that in the game. Then we have the Dark Wheel, and we have Raxxla. Okay, two separate categories, which means that in the Codex, they're at least as important as any of the others. One would assume, for the fact that they've been included. So that weighs, you know, that adds in something. Okay, the fact that they're in here at all means that they are significant to the lore, the gameplay of Elite Dangerous even today. Because there has been criticism. Well, Raxxla that's an old thing. Okay, Raxxla was an old thing. Well, yes, I think that's fair. And the Dark Wheel is, you know, it's all the old lore. It's all been retconned. It's all gone. Well, it isn't, because it's in here. Okay. I think we can all agree, if it's in the game, accessible to our commanders in the year 3306, you know, it has some concreteness to it. Okay, it has some concreteness to it. It's in the Codex. There is some information about Raxxla and the Dark Wheel in the Codex. Let's have a quick look. Now, this is supposed to be an alleged toast of the Dark Wheel, and the Dark Wheel and Raxxla are very much intertwined, and we'll go back into that as well about this. Now, according to the Codex, they mentioned this is the really interesting part. Okay, and we'll get down to the Dark Wheel in a bit. The earliest recorded mention of Raxxla dates from 2296. And I just need to pop something back up here because I'm going to need it in a moment, because I've got so many notes on all this. I've got windows open everywhere on the screen. It's all a bit confusing. But 2296. Okay, now those of you who've been following the lore will know this era of the game, 2296, predates quite a lot of other stuff. Okay, now this is, I think, an important detail, because in around 2296, and that's the first mention of Raxxla, but according to the text that's in the Codex here, maybe we should go find Raxxla while we're at it. And that implies that Raxxla, whatever it is, has been talked about prior to this date as well. It seems like it's already an established myth of some kind by this point in time. So Raxxla at least is as far back as 2296 and possibly beforehand. Now, what's going on in the Elite Dangerous lore around this time? Now, you will remember the history of the Federation, where we talked about the Third World War. You'll remember the history of the Empire and all those sort of stuff. Now, this precedes the formation of the Empire. Okay, the Empire is formed in and around 2300. Okay, so this reference is slightly before the formation of the Empire. It's way before the Alliance. It's way before any of the modern stuff that we're used to in the universe of Elite. In fact, even in the interest of Elite, the original game. This is solely Federation, early Federation territory, if that date is correct. Okay, if that date is correct. Now it's in the Codex. Now, do we trust the Codex? Is the Codex law? There's no way to ascertain that. We only have to assume that what we're seeing in our ship is accurate. Now, we can argue reasonably that, well, maybe the Codex is just what they want us to see. But that way lies madness, okay? So we have to be a bit careful about that sort of stuff. And most of the rest of the stuff in here sits quite well, okay? So let's have a quickly look at the Federation. So we see here 2161 is the Tau Ceti stuff that we're talking about. 2621, okay, that's way later. That's much way later. And we've got much more history, through some of the things that I've found out that's actually represented in here. But we know, and if we go to the Empire here, I don't think, if I recall this, we have a date, or maybe we do. Ashnal 60, mid 23rd century. Okay, so that is 2250-ish, is mid 23rd century. So that's when they start out. And the Empire doesn't really get going for another sort of 50, 60 years. So just as people are leaving for the Empire, that's when the legend of Raxxla is in circulation for the first time, according to the Codex. Now that means something, okay? Now bear in mind what we have about the technology of the era, okay? Bear in mind what we have about the technology of the era. Hyperspace is in its infancy. It does exist. We have had hyperspace for a while by this point, but it's not very advanced. It's slow, it's cumbersome, it's not available to everybody, and it takes you a long, long time to get there. So how far has humanity stretched out into space by the year 2296? Well, the answer isn't very far, okay? The Federation has colonized Tau Ceti, Beta Hydri, etc., etc., etc. Places that we went before as earlier parts of the lore, okay? Let's go and have a look at those systems. If we go to Sol, which is where we started, okay, it's not that far away. In fact, Lave and the systems around it are quite a lot further out, as you can see, and they are settled by the generation ships, as we discussed, in around 25th, 26th century. So Raxxla precedes all of that stuff. It's really early on in the lore of the game, and it precedes most of the generation ship stuff, okay? Most of the generation ship stuff. So humanity really should only be in, or at least most of humanity is only going to be in a bubble of maybe 100 light years across, okay? Which has led me to the conclusion, based on the information that we have, that Raxxla, if it is a location, can't be that far away from home, okay? Can't be that far away from home, based on what is there, okay? Now, what is Raxxla, okay? What is Raxxla? What do we know? Well, this is the trick, okay? Let's assume the Codex is correct, okay? 2296. Let's assume the Codex is correct. That's one thing. Now, the Dark Wheel novella has been retconned to a degree, okay? There's definitely retconning going on. Now, because in the original Elite, the galaxy was peopled with sentient life forms of various different types. So some of them were cats, you know, you've heard of furry felines, and there were lobstoids, and there were all sorts of kind of anthropomorphic animals, really, which are all sapient, and you could have conversations with them. And the Thargoids were, you know, an insecty-like version of that. So this book by Robert Holdstock, whilst it is the foundation of the legend of the Dark Wheel and Raxxla, has been retconned. The question is, how much has been retconned? Because not all of it has been. Okay, and this is the balancing act with the lore, because we don't really know. But there are clues. There are clues. Okay, in this story, unsurprisingly, it's a beautiful crate, just pink crate. Very nice. You know, in the story, we go to Teorge. We pinch a Cobra Mark III, and we go on a, you know, classic trading thing. But very early on, they meet a chap by the name of Rafe Zeta, and he says a few things about Raxxla. Okay, and it turns out that Jason Ryder, Alex's father, hasn't been completely honest with his son. He's been living a separate life as an elite combateer that he never told his family. And this is, they has a conversation with this guy called Rafe, who's a bit of an odd character, hangs out around Teorge about half a light year out. And this is what Rafe says about Raxxla. Okay, he says, I'm going to switch a light on. I just realised it's getting really dark in here. My camera's auto adjusting, but I can't see. He said a lot. The last thing, in his desperate words, "Remember me, Alex." I think he knew he was going to die. The last thing he said to me was the word Raxxla. I don't know what that is. An alien, I guess. Rafe smiled, shaking his head, and suddenly there was a brilliant sparkle in his eyes. Raxxla's no alien, Alex. It's a ghost world, a planet, a legend. And then he looks at him, kind of quizzically. Jason really said that to you? And Alex nodded, and he's saying that's the last thing he said. So we get that clue straight on. It's a ghost world, it's a planet, it's a legend. Okay, Raxxla is arguably, from this at least, a location, a physical place. So that's a clue. That's part of it. Then we get a whole bunch of other bits and pieces. Now, most of the story is concerned about not worrying about Raxxla until we get ourselves a decent ship, which is kind of the story of the early part of the early game, right? So they spent a lot of time upgrading the ship and getting into trouble with Thargoids and having all kind of good stuff. And eventually they get to kill the guy who killed Jason's father. And then there's a small conversation at the end, okay, about this. And Rafe comes back. It's kind of like a codex, okay. He says, "You fought well. You showed the sort of instinct for combat that I remember in Jason. He was right. You are the man to follow him." Follow him? Where? And Rafe chuckled and shook his head. "You see, that's the big question. Your father was chasing the mythical planet Raxxla." Although there's actually a typo in the book which says the mythical plant Raxxla. One of those things. So maybe, actually, I'll just show you that, just so you don't think, you know, I'm not making it up. There is actually a typo in this version. Hang on a minute. Let me just point at it. There we go. well, maybe it isn't a typo, right? It says there the mythical plant Raxxla. So maybe Raxxla is just a plant. But I'm pretty sure it's a typo. And it says, "Does it exist or does it not? If it does, then on Raxxla, there's an alien construct that's a gateway to other universes, and all that's in those universes in the way of bounty, treasures, and aliens and life. Jason Ryder was convinced Raxxla existed, and that's why he trained for and became part of dun, 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 the Dark Wheel." I just hadn't heard much from him about him for some time. Just before he died, he told me he'd found evidence for the real existence of Raxxla. Okay, so Jason Ryder, the guy who was assassinated by somebody, found evidence for the real existence of Raxxla. He came back from deep space to get a proper team together, and just before that, he got himself killed. But why? Why kill him for finding Raxxla? Good question. Okay. And Rafe responds, because there are people on Raxxla already. This is only a guess, mind you, but from what happened to Jason, I'd say it was close to being right. We've long suspected that a core of elites live there, and are exploiting the gateway. They're powerful, twisted men, powerful enough to hire an assassin to kill the threat to their dominance. And then he says, I put you through your paces. The Dark Wheel needs you, both of you. Believe me, you've just been through is nothing to what you're going to face now. You've got to become elite. That means a lot of training, a lot of fighting, maybe a lot of months, even years. And then the universe will open up before you in a way you've never imagined possible. How does it feel to be rich? Empathy. You'll do for the Dark Wheel, Alex. You'll do. So if we take any of that, okay, now we don't know how much of that is canon anymore, okay. It's impossible to be sure, okay, because there have been many retcons. There have been many retcons to Elite canon in various ways between the original games and then various other things that have happened, and we'll get into that with the Thargoids because that story's been changed, okay, into that. But the Dark Wheel has been referenced in game. It's in the Codex. Raxxla has been referenced in game. It's in the Codex. And there are other various bits and pieces included in there. Most of the locations in this book are in the game. Okay, so is there a way of finding out more? Well, that's the question, isn't it? So that's where Raxxla starts. It's early on in the lore, in the timeline. I'm just going to switch my other lighting on here because I'm squinting into a glare. So let's spell that Raxxla's a plant, shall we? I don't think it's a plant. It would be rather disappointing if it was a plant, right? I've got some Raxxlas. I'm smoking them today. So Raxxla has been mentioned in. Shall we also describe it as the meta, kind of the story of the game rather than the story that's in the game. So originally created by Robert. David Braben has been on stream a number of times on the official Frontier streams, and you can look them up. I imagine. I'm not quite sure how you find them, but I'm supposed to be on my external view. Sorry, guys, I keep forgetting to do that. Let's just do that so you can see all the glorious people who are trying to crush my ship out of existence. Now I've got to go into F9. Right, there we go. My poor little Cobra is being squashed between two crates. I think that's just wrong. Not sure what's going on there, but it looks highly suspicious. So Raxxla, it's not a plant, okay, but the meta lore, we have had David Braben come on stream and say things about Raxxla, and he has talked about it on stream briefly, to be said, and he said things like, well, of course, okay. So that is, that is clear. Now I've said this many times, so I will repeat it here for what it's worth. I don't know whether it's worth a great deal, but I met David Braben. I went along to and he didn't know me at the time. He'd heard of me because I'd done one of the books, obviously, but he hadn't actually met me, I don't think, at the time. He was giving a talk at a BAFTA Awards ceremony in London. Now I managed to get a ticket for this, along with a few other elite commanders of yore, quite a few years ago now. I think this must have been 2015. And we went along to see his presentation. His presentation was entitled "My Other Car." I think this is right. My other car is a Cobra Mark III. Now you can find that presentation on YouTube. And I was sitting in the audience, and he obviously clocked me, or somebody told him I was there, because he actually said, "Oh, we've got one of the authors of the books in the audience," which was quite great for me because it's like, "Oh my god." David Braben knows my name. So that was quite a cool moment. But he didn't reference anything else. He gave his presentation, and the hall was full, but not kind of packed. It was surprising that I'm not quite sure whether it wasn't advertised very much or anything. But anyway, I was in this presentation. David Braben gave the talk, and I, with a friend of mine, got an opportunity to say hello to the master, because you would, right? This is the guy who did the game. So I sort of wandered up at the end of the presentation and said, can I just sort of shake your hand? That sort of shake your hand kind of, it's David Braben moment. So I got a picture, and we had a brief chat about Elite, and I asked him, because this is a mystery that I care about, because I love the law, and I asked him face to face, man to man, is Raxxla in the game? And he said, yes, it is. And we, as in Frontier, know where it is. To which both I and the people around us, other commanders, basically all went, ooh, as you might expect. And this was 2015, okay? The game had literally only just came out. So, everything was fresh and shiny and new, and all the wonder and stuff was like, oh, So, but he said it was there. And he's gone on record on several Frontier streams since, saying it's there, it's out there in some form or another. Now, is it a place? Michael Brooks has also been on record a few times in the past, nothing recently, but he's also said, there will be no clues. And it's a journey you all need to take yourself, slightly mystical things before those kind of things. Now, this all predates the Codex, you're quite right. But those are the only two people who, if it is there, they know about it, all these, as far as I can tell. Everybody else I've asked at Frontier, and I've asked as many as I can, whenever I get an opportunity to meet a Frontier person, I always ask. Yes, and Michael Brooks said it's in the Milky Way, so that kind of implies it's a location. Okay, kind of implies it's a location. So if we got a few clues, it seems to be a place. Whether it's a planet or a moon or a system, it's not entirely clear, but it seems to be a place. It's in the Milky Way, and we have from the Codex, it was known about from 2296, which does sort of limit how far away it can be, because humanity hadn't gone all that far into space by the time that Raxxla was already being mentioned as a mythical lost place. And in the lore, as you've read, and these characters did exist in the lore, they still exist in the lore, because they're in some of the official novellas and official novels that have come out with Elite Dangerous, that the characters who refer to Raxxla went on and did other things, and therefore Raxxla is in the lore. Is it in the game? Is the obvious question. Is it really, really in the game? I don't know. And there's a reason I don't know. There's been a little bit of a little joke about the NDAs. Okay, so all the writers, myself included, had to sign an NDA with Frontier about all sorts of behind the scenes. Now, most of that, to be honest, is now totally public common knowledge, because it's come out over the last 5-6 years. Okay, unsurprisingly. So most of the stuff that we knew that was secret isn't secret anymore. Everyone's seen it. It's all happened. But we still have to respect that, because we signed it. It's a legal thing. But I can tell you by it's kind of by omission, really. Raxxla wasn't detailed in the material that was given to me. Neither was the Dark Wheel. Okay, and most of us kind of took that as a kind of cue. Don't talk about Raxxla. Don't talk about the Dark Wheel, because it's sort of top secret in the lore of the game. I wanted to reference it, and I asked for whether or not I could reference Raxxla in my story, Elite Reclamation, and I was told, no, you can't. Not in a nasty way, just don't, please, basically. And same happened to one of my colleagues, John Harper. He wanted to actually write about the Dark Wheel, and he was told that he couldn't. And so he kind of did a sort of sideways step with the Circle of Independent Pilots, which you can find in his book, which is excellent, by the way. John Harper's And Hear the Wheel, which is a sort of little play on the Dark Wheel, obviously the title. And he went a slightly different way, but he did take some of the original characters and so there are small references to it, but it was off limits. It was very specifically, don't go and play there. Okay, that is our mythos. We don't really want you guys to come in and do anything about that, which is fine. You know, and to be honest, that was to me a bit of a relief because I wanted to write my own story, so I did. You know, I did the Empire and Kahina and Salome and all that stuff we've already covered. So that was sort of the steer that we got as writers way back. This is back in 2013. And yeah, that was the steer. That was the steer. So we couldn't we couldn't talk about Raxxla in that sense. Now Raxxla is bound up in other things as well as things like the Dark Wheel. But what we do know at this point is that it seems to be a planet. We've had people from Frontier tell us, yes, it's there in some form or another. Have we seen any clues to it in the game in the last 6 years? Not really. Other than, you know, I certainly raised an eyebrow when I saw it in the Codex, when that was sort of on. I was like, ooh, is stuff about to happen with Raxxla? But there's been nothing obvious to follow up with it recently. Now, stepping outside the lore for a minute, I think there's a very good reason for that. Raxxla's been a myth since 1984, okay, so that is now, how many years ago is that? Is that 36 years? With my writing hat on, which is what I've got on, to do justice to a legend in a computer game that is 36 years old and not make it naff is quite an ask. Okay, just from a, you know, completely outside the lore for a moment, just looking at it from, okay, if you were going to sit down and go, right, what are we going to do? Let's assume it's not in the game today, but we were going to put it in tomorrow. What would we do? That's a really tough question to answer. Okay, a really tough question to answer. I wouldn't. In some ways, I would relish that opportunity. In other ways, I'd be terrified by it because, you know, what would you do to make it as awesome as possible? And that's the thing that's always been at the back of my head. Sorry, I'm speaking in British English. Naff. Naff means not very good. Anticlimactic. That's very good. Yeah, well done. So you know, so there's that thing. What could you possibly do to make it as awesome as everybody would need it to be? You know, I don't know is the answer to that. I haven't been asked to do it. So yeah, but that would be a challenge. It really would be a challenge. But it's been off limits. Okay, it's been very specifically off limits to anybody who's been involved in the lore, even peripherally. It is mentioned in the game. It's kind of referred to as a gateway, a portal, a ghost planet. All of these things are wrapped up in it, and they sort of, you know, get that in the in the Codex entry as well. Now, there's also been a persistent rumour about that somebody had jumped into the system, hooked it, and then gone to their merry way without stopping. I have found numerous references to people quoting this, but I've never ever found the original articles. I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where that original quote is from, whether it's a live stream somewhere, a YouTube video. There's lots of forum references to it, but only to the fact that it's reported secondhand. I've never been able to substantiate it. So as far as I'm concerned, I've never been able to prove it. So it's not on my list. I can't find it. I can't find the original citation for it. So if somebody does know where that is, please do let me know, because that that will add some gravitas to that particular one, that someone has actually been there. That would be very, very cool, because it implies there's a place. Okay. It was an so, and I've heard lots of stories about where it started from. So it wasn't a live stream; it was a joke in an elite meetup. So these things can spread like wildfire. Okay, Okay, so some, yeah, so well, yeah, so there's conversations upon conversations upon the conversations. Okay, and it's really difficult to sift out what's true and what's not. But if we stick with the law, it can't be too far away. My theory on this has always been that it's actually a a place that's hidden in some fashion. And it's not too far away, because in the year 2296, whilst we did have hyperspace drive, we couldn't have got that far, from where we are now. So that's a thing. Found Raxxla, it's a golden asp in yours. So there we go. So these are all things that have. The problem is now, particularly with the internet, is it's really hard to get to the original source of these things. It does make it even more confusing. But putting this in context, Raxxla exists in the original game from a perspective of the lore. It's in the novel. That's where it starts, and then everything proceeds from there. So there we go. Now there are a few other bits and pieces that are connected with Raxxla. In the lore, there's another organisation I've already mentioned, the Circle of Independent Pilots, which is something created by John Harper, and they are connected with the world of Soontill. So just make sure we've got something to do in the game. We're going to take a little trip over to Soontill and talk about that. I'm just going to add a few late minute friend requests again. So hyperspace drive. Let's take a trip over there. And jump back in my ship. There we go. Zoom. Let's go to the Soontill system, and we'll keep talking about this. It's a little bit of a way away, and for some reason I've not got my galaxy chart things on. Where's that? There we go. It's because it's actually outside the bubble. There we go. So if you want to follow me over there, that's what I'm going to kind of charge off to next. It's 6 jumps for me because I've got a decent cobra. So follow me around, my friends. Follow me around. And it looks like the first jump is behind the planet. Funny how that always happens, right? So, the Dark Wheel is, we think, a place. The references in the lore indicate its physical location. The references in the clues have been given by David Braben and Michael Brooks tend to imply it's a place as well. So I'm fairly confident it's a location, but is it? Is it a thing? So we'll find out. Right. So let's get this moon out of the way.
Frameshift drive charging.
And then we can turn around, and hopefully, there it is. Right. I'll head off across this now. John Harper's book, And Here the Wheel, talks about, and his book is more set in the sort of Frontier First Encounters era, because that was his favourite game. He talks about the extended family of the Riders. Okay, so the Riders are the people in that original story. And he went on, according to the lore, he went on a quest for Raxxla. And then he and his family had a disagreement as to whether Raxxla or some of the stuff they were concerned with in terms of the Thargoids was the right place to locate, spend all their resources, because they hadn't found Raxxla for a lot of time. A lot of Sackers, that's quite right. Yeah, Sackers is a particular type of ship that John Harper was very fond of. Bless him, and never made it into Elite Dangerous, unfortunately. Very odd-looking ship, it's Soontill was another weird one for which you can get. I think I'm correct in saying one of the engineers requires you to pick up some Soontill relics. But oddly enough, you don't get Soontill relics from Soontill. You get them from another place called Naguri. They're artifacts of some kind of weird alien type. But they're quite useful for getting friendly with the engineers.
System scan complete. Fuel scooping.
So Soontill is connected Raxxla in an indirect way. It's Elvira, is it? There we go. Thank you very much. I should know that. I wrote the dialogue for Elvira. And for those of you who've done the engineers, you'll know that Elvira is rather flirty. I was given the task of writing the dialogue for Elvira, and I thought, well, with a name like Elvira, what else is she going to be? Okay. So you can blame me for Elvira's flirtiness when she's talking to you as an engineer. That is entirely my creation. So it was good fun. It was good fun. I think she tells you you're very potent commander as you rise up the ranks of the engineers. The people who were searching for Raxxla, at least some of the people
Field scoping.
searching for Raxxla, Alex Ryder, he who had his father killed because of Raxxla, are Soontill became one of their quests as well. So Soontill is sort of a side quest on the way to Raxxla. Now Soontill is a place you can see in the game, and nothing particularly weird and wonderful happens there. Scully of the Most is now laughing about the thing. Elvira, yes. So she's a lovely lady, I'm sure. The next time you see the dialogue for Elvira, do chuckle because it was. I think I did some of the others, but I can't remember. It's such a long time ago. So yeah, but Elvira was one of mine. And I put her in premonition. A little affinity. Now.
System scan complete. Fuel
So,
scoping.
right, okay, so there we go. Let's get in there. Don't do too many things at once. Flying a ship and talking to the camera is I'm getting old. Just struggling to think about it and but we'll get there. So Soontill was kind of a side quest for the people in the lore who were originally searching for Raxxla. And according to the codex, Raxxla predates most of the Empire and all that kind of stuff. It's existed before. So the rumours have come back from deep space about that. And there's Soontill ahead of us. Okay. Fuel from that stuff.
Fuel scoping.
We'll find a nice place to park up and get some more shots. Raxxla is the game launcher. Now,
Engaged.
if we assume it's in game,
Frameshift drive charging.
there ought to be some sort of clues, okay, some sort of clues to its location. Now, early on in the game, there are, at least there were, references to mission targets by a minor faction in the Shinatra Desert system called the Dark Wheel. So who are the Dark Wheel? We've discovered Soontill. There we go. Look at that. Clearly that meant something. Right. So look, there's things like secret base. I mean, that's quite interesting, isn't it? That pops up on your scale. I think let's rendezvous at the secret base. Okay. I know it's just a Teorge speaker, but it sounds cool. Let's rendezvous at the secret base, which is advertising itself to every scanner that scans it.
Frameshift drive charging.
We have signs like this in the UK actually. Top secret nuclear bunker, 2 miles that way, and a sign pointing to it. It's a tourist thing, just before you wander. But it always makes me chuckle when we see because it's kind of like the secret base is over there. So I'm not quite sure what this one is. Maybe this might. I haven't read this one. This might be something to do with John Harper's. That's a good point, Viper, to 2K UK, is that in the original game you could do what's called a galactic hyperspace jump between what were called galactic charts. Now, it wasn't clear in the game entirely whether these were different galaxies or different areas. Now, actually, we've checked this since because it came up on my ZX Spectrum stream on Saturday. It does actually say different galaxies. Now that may again have been retconned, but if it hasn't been, it implies. Oh look, lots of touristy things. So there's the secret base. Which obviously is a tourist beacon. So let's come back on the tourist beacon. There we go. We have tourist beacon download complete. What does it actually say here? Just going to check this one out. The secret base. It is rumored to be that, there we go, this is rumored to be the site of the CIEP, Circle of Independent Elite Pilots. Some stories here claim a combined human Thargoid project took place here. So if you want to know more about that, that is to do with John Harper's book And Here the Wheel, which you can get from all good copies of Amazon. Okay, so if you do want to get a hold of that, then it's worth checking that out. There is stuff about Thargoids, there is stuff about Soontill, and there is stuff about the kind of edges of the Raxxla mystery around there. So there's a connection here to the world of Soontill. We've kind of got a connection. So let's go back to the galaxy map, because this always I find is quite interesting. See if we're kind of travelling around the look at that, like a comet trail. Okay, so there's Sinatra Desra, however you pronounce that. Here we have, that's actually where kind of my home planet is. You can see where Sol is. We can see where Teorge now. Soontill is actually on a track away from Lave and away from Sol. So Sol is down there. There's Teorge in the old worlds, and then Soontill is kind of out here, which kind of feels about right for the distance. Okay, so you know, looking at this, feels about the right sort of distance that within this sphere somewhere. Maybe there's, you know, is the hunting ground for Raxxla, if it's a location, because it can't be that far away if it's mentioned in 2296. But what we don't have is any real substance to go on. You know, the kind of the way it's presented in the Elite Dangerous story is like, yeah, well, yes, it's a story, but there's nothing behind it. You know, but it's always there in the background. Okay, it's always there in the background. Now, I mentioned Sinatra Desra. Now, this is what's called the Founders World. Okay, the Founders World. Who are the Founders? It's a very good question. They're sort of kind of the descendants of Jameson, the Commander Jameson. They're sort of related to him, and they've set up a world here. This is also now the home of the Pilots Federation, I believe. And Sinatra Desra in the game is a place that you can only get access to once you become elite in at least one of the ranks, which, interesting enough, does tie up with you know, one of the requirements mentioned in the Dark Wheel. So the Founders kind of are around here. The Pilots Federation are also an interesting bunch. Now the Pilot Federation is part of, yeah, as commanders in spaceships, we're all part of the Pilots Federation, and the Pilots Federation and the Dark Wheel and the Founders are intertwined in weird and wonderful ways. Okay. Now I can't take you to Sinatra Desra on this account because I'm not elite. One of my other accounts is, and I can go there, but you know, it's today it's nothing particularly special. But I believe I'm correct in saying that there still is a Dark Wheel faction there, which you can work for, but they seem to be immune to the background galaxy simulation. You can't expand their influence in a kind of normal way. So yeah, so that's a thing. Sinatra Desra in the game today, you can't get access to get to Elite, and what it gives you is, I think you can have every ship and every module is available. So it's kind of a perk, really, for people who were in the original Kickstarter. You got given a kind of bonus to get in there, and then people since can get to it by becoming an elite rank. I've got access to it on my other account because that's my Kickstarter account, and so it has a kind of carte blanche to get into Sinatra Desra. Okay, so that's a thing that you can go to. Now, in that system is a minor faction called the Dark Wheel. Now, in the early days of Elite, they would give out missions. They would give out missions, and the missions would be quite peculiar. in the sense of, you know, they would talk about the great mystery, and they would send you off on small little quests, okay, to go and check things out, but they never seem to really lead it. So the question, the obvious question is the Dark Wheel minor faction that's in Shinatra Desert related to the real Dark Wheel? Because it's an odd thing for a totally secretive organisation to kind of have a billboard in a space station, isn't it? It's not the sort of thing you'd expect a top secret organisation to have. It's a bit like it's like Spies Are Us, kind of anonymous, saying spies wanted. Come here, and we'll give you a mission. So, was the Dark Wheel in Shinatra Desert actually connected to the real Dark Wheel, or is it a front, or is it a filter, or is it just unrelated and somebody's doing it? So it's a bit that's unclear. Commander Kelvin has a good point. The best way to hide something is to put it in plain sight. Yeah, that could be the way. Or it could be a really handy thing to keep people occupied while the real Dark Wheel is off doing something else in the world. So that's odd. Is it a red herring? Is it a red herring in the lore, or is it a red herring in the game? It's not entirely clear. So it's worth pointing out. Okay, well, hang on a minute. Who are the Dark Wheel? Okay, who are the Dark Wheel? So this is the next thing we need to talk about in this context. Still getting friend. This always strikes me as a bit bizarre. Still getting friend requests even. Here we go. Lots of people here. So this is us hanging around at the secret base. Okay, it's slightly funny. So don't tell anybody else. Okay, where the secret base is, guys, because this is the secret base. Everybody. Well, is stacking ships a thing now? Obviously it is. There we go. I'm not quite sure why stacking things is a thing, but there we go. We're definitely there's a lot of ships here being stacked. So there we go. We're at the secret base in the Soontill system. Oh, and now we're under attack. Who's firing at us? I think that might... Is that... Oh, no, we've all run away. Am I still alive? What's going on? That's the first time I've been attacked, actually, in this game. I thought I'd have a little bit more trouble. So, anyway, I'm going to put my shields up. There we go. Someone's being naughty. So, anyway, there we go. So we're in the secret base, okay? It's the cops. Yes, it could be. Protect Drew at any cost. It's all good. That's one of the reasons I'm in the Cobra. We haven't had any problems really up until now, but I'm not sure who was firing or why. So if somebody could explain that, then that's great. But we'll fly around again in a minute. There's plenty of ships here. So the Dark Wheel. Okay, so who are the Dark Wheel? Okay, now name of the novel. This is where it starts again. Okay, Dark Wheel. So who are the Dark Wheel? The Dark Wheel, according to the lore, are a group of kind of mythical people. I need to find the reference actually. They're probably going to be faster because I'm not quite sure exactly where it is in the lore. It's probably going to be faster for me to dig out the actual original document here and find it that way. So let's just look it up while we're here. Okay, so the description of the Dark Wheel that's given in the book, The Dark Wheel, is: the Dark Wheel is a semi-legendary space unit. Star riders who made it their business to seek the truth behind the plethora of myths and romantic stories that filtered back from all corners of the universe. Fabulous cities, parallel worlds, time travelers, even planets that appear to be the old heaven of Earth legend. The Dark Wheel was as mysterious and mythical to the traders of the galaxy as King Arthur might have been to the first spaceman. So they're kind of a weird, secretive sect of people. They're legend seekers. They go out into space and they find the truth about stuff. And it doesn't tell us much more about them. The Dark Wheel are very much a kind of organisation that doesn't, you can't call them, they call you. Okay, they deem that you're worthy to join them, and they send you an invitation. And you can't go and join the Dark Wheel. You know, if just because you want to, you have to sort of do something that earns their respect, that they notice you, and then they'll invite you if they see you fit. Now that appears, the criteria for that appear to be you've got to be elite. So I think if there are any missions in the game that are triggered by, you know, that have a Raxxla stroke Dark Wheel thing that are significant, I think you're going to have to be elite, and probably I would guess a combat elite. Astro of Card Goes, that's a good question. If somebody kills me on the stream, does the law talk end? Yeah, that's it. That's game over. You've got to protect me, okay? Yeah, if you kill me, then the law talk. Yeah, there's nobody here. I'm dead. Not really. No, we're not. But I think a combat elite ranking is possibly a mission requirement. If there is something to trigger a Raxxla stroke Dark Wheel mission in the game, I think a elite combat rating is probably something that you would need to have. So that's a thing I suspect in there. So the Dark Wheel are this mystery cabal of a secretive society that sort of sits behind the game. I kind of see them as a subset of the Pilots Federation, and the Pilots Federation are a shifty bunch anyway. Okay, they're quite odd, and they sit behind that. Okay, and they're kind of looking at things and keeping an eye on things. In order to make this sort of stuff happen. So the Dark Wheel have been around. Now let's have a look at what it says in the Codex regarding the Dark Wheel, because this is slightly different. Okay, so in the knowledge base we have the Dark Wheel as a category, and actually we hear from one of the engineers, so somebody we can actually interact with is talking here. So Felicity Farseer, one of our engineers, basically says this: oh, they're out there all right. I've never met them, but I know they're out there. Think about how well known the stories are. Think about how easy it would be for some two-bit band of hucksters to pass themselves off as the Dark Wheel and start trading on their reputation. Doesn't happen, does it? Not for long, anyway. Whenever someone tries to usurp the Dark Wheel name, sooner or later they get quietly shut down, and that's how I know. Now that's interesting, because that's almost like what happened in Shinatra Desra. There was a Dark Wheel and it stopped, kind of. Or at least it stopped offering missions anyway. Felicity Farseer, who is a lore character in the game, and we can go and interact with her on a daily basis if we so wish. Unfortunately, there's no way in the game for us to ask any questions of it other than, can you upgrade my frameshift drive? But she exists. She's in the lore. Okay, so Felicity Farseer has said this. She is convinced that the Dark Wheel exists. And here in the Codex, this is very similar to the description in the Dark Wheel book. They're a legendary group of adventurers, explorers, investigators, and treasure hunters. The existence of which is so lacking in corroborative evidence is generally considered to be a myth. So they're considered a myth as well. And the group is often mentioned in connection with the equally unsubstantiated Raxxla. And people who do think it exists consider it to be a continuous and clandestine organisation operating since the very earliest days of interstellar travel, which marries up with the Raxxla date. Okay. It does say here, it's futile to attempt to contact the Dark Wheel on one's own initiative, however. It's always they who initiate contact, initially in disguise, revealing their true identity only once a suitable test of courage and skill has been discreetly administered and passed. So if you do encounter the Dark Wheel, they're not going to say, we're the Dark Wheel! They're going to test you in some fashion, okay? Theories assert that new members may be selected on the basis of lineage, with existing members covertly training their children. Conversely, the opposite may be true. There's a lady here called Lyta Crane, who's a conspiracy theorist, so almost certainly wrong, who has painstakingly assembled an archive of relevant data, and the original group was based in a disused starport orbiting the 8th moon of an unnamed gas giant. Okay, now that is a clue. How easy it is to search the entire galaxy for an 8th moon of an unnamed gas giant is difficult to say. But this lady believes the starport's still in use. So such a starport has never been found. Now, again, this is interesting. Okay, so stepping outside the lore again for a moment. We've been told by Frontier, and I don't want to get into the pros and cons of lore, and we've talked about that quite a lot. As to how Frontier are doing the lore. They've backpedaled a bit from putting things in the game at the moment. We know Galnet's been shut down and CGs, etc., etc., etc. Okay, but they have been very specific in the past, sort of 6-9 months back, saying that they don't want to put fluff articles in the game that don't relate to gameplay. Okay, fine, we all get that. Okay, so and we've I've talked about it on this stream. You've talked about it in chat. We talked about it on the forums and Reddit. So we've all got our opinions on whether that's good or bad things. Okay, but Galnet has stopped. Okay, so we're not getting those fluff articles. This though is still in the game. So I think, unless an upcoming version of the game changes the codex, and I think given that a beta is currently underway, and there will be a fairly significant game refresh with the fleet carriers coming fairly soon. We'll get the output of that before too long. We ought to spend some time, I think, looking through the codex again once fleet carriers goes live. And I don't know if anybody's in the beta, whether anybody's spotted any difference. Oh, actually, there we go. Commander the Shrike has said in the beta there is no Raxxla anymore. Does the Dark Wheel exist in the beta? Is a question. Commander Thatcherino, was Riccardo Bentonio one of your creations? No, he wasn't, but I did enjoy. I did enjoy his stories, but no, he wasn't one of mine. I did like that one. I thought it was quite good. Okay, so the codex was designed to be static. It was, but it is only text. Okay, so I can't see from a technical perspective it being all that difficult to update. Raxxla has been removed in the beta. Okay, well that's interesting. That is interesting. Well, we can't draw too many conclusions from the beta because it could have been pulled for all sorts of reasons. But we ought to check. Okay, we ought to check whether or not it's been removed when Fleet Carrier is, the update goes live. I don't know which version of Elite Dangerous that's going to be. 3 point something. Thank you, whoever's logged in and checked that. In the beta, there's no Raxxla. But Chris G is saying, I'm in the Raxxla article in the beta right now. Okay. Raxxla is in the beta. Okay, so it's not entirely clear whether it is or not. As in, okay, so sorry, Commander the Shrike was wrong. He apologises, and that's why. Okay, so the Dark Wheel and Raxxla are apparently are in the beta. Okay, so that's interesting. Okay, but we should check, I think, just to make sure there's no changes to it. It's probably a good idea if somebody, unfortunately you can't copy and paste this because it's just in the game, but it would be worth snapshotting what it does say about these organisations in here. So it does actually make reference, just going back to the point, it does actually, Commander Strike almost had us panicking there. It does make reference to the Sinatra Desra system here. In 3300, which is the date at which the game starts, a group identifying itself as the Dark Wheel emerged in the Sinatra Desra system, which is not accessible to the pilots of low and elite rank other than the Kickstarter players. It is not apparent if the group is a legitimate descendant of the original Dark Wheel, a reconstruction, or merely an opportunistic imitator, which is a good thing. Which is exactly as it's described in the game. We don't know. Okay. Now, given that Galnet has stopped and the lore seems to be on pause, possibly until the new era of Elite arrives, which I think is 2021. I think Frontier put something up about it being delayed for Q1, didn't they? Which was down to the coronavirus, obviously, which is fair enough. And they've diverted writing resources. Okay, they've said that. I think it's Stephen Benedetti came on the forums and said they've diverted writing resources to the new era. Okay, now that means there's obviously some sort of flavor text in that game. There's probably bits of dialogue. If it is space legs, which I don't think it's been confirmed yet that it is, there's going to be stuff for us to interact with. Some of that's going to be text overlays and all that kind of stuff. Okay, that's all got to be written, which presumably the writing team, which I can only assume isn't a very big writing team. It may only be a person being the writing team. I'm not sure. I've no idea. They've moved from the perspective of there won't be fluff articles. Okay, those kind of galaxy spanning narratives of Princess Ashling's underwear and all those sort of things. I made that up. All those sort of things. They're not, at least for the foreseeable future, they're not going to be there. It's not entirely clear whether they're on hold until the new era and then they'll restart, or whether something new is coming, or what. We just don't know really. But they have said they don't want to do fluff stuff, i.e. stuff that's in Galnet which doesn't relate to in-game activity, and yet all this stuff is still here. Okay, and I think it's encouraging for the purposes of this stream that this stuff is still here. Although it's lightweight, okay, there's not much really here. It's only sort of reinforcing a little bit what we already know. There is a sort of clue here, but I don't know if anybody's been lucky in looking for an 8th moon of an unnamed gas giant with a toroidal space station around it. That's potentially something you could look for, but that really is a needle in a haystack. And that only leads you to the dark wheel, which doesn't necessarily really help because they won't talk to you unless they invite you first. So that's a problem. And Raxxla is in the game as well. Now there's 2 graphics here associated with it as well. What do these mean? Do they mean anything? Pagan Mist has been looking for numerous 8th moons. Okay, well there we go. So there's another thing. Okay. Thing is that what they should have done, it continues writing the fluff, but put stuff from the fluff in the game. So that used to be the case. Okay, some of the stuff in the fluff did appear in the game. Not very much, arguably, but some of it did, and it was it was kind of fun sifting the fluff from the actual stuff. But some of the cool stuff that was fluff would have been great to see in game, but unfortunately it wasn't there. And I can understand from a gameplay perspective if it says there's a pirate attack going in the XYZ system, and you go to the XYZ system and there's nothing there. It's kind of a bit demoralising. So I do get that criticism of the way Galnet was. It's just a bit of a shame that they can't up the content rather than lower the content. But anyway, but Raxxla and the Dark Wheel are in the Codex, okay? And the Codex is right here. It's right on the panel. It's a big deal. It's part of the UI of the cockpit of your ship. So stuff in there, to me, almost has a higher importance than Galnet, because Galnet was here in the game. We can access it. There's the power play update and the Thargoid activity report is the only stuff that's actually in there now. So there's not much going on. But and we know about that, and we know the reasons for that. But it's the Codex is right there. So boom. Now, where does that leave us? Does it leave us anywhere? We've been told in the meta that Raxxla's there. The Dark Wheel is a faction in Shinatra Dejra. Raxxla was a legend from the ancient days. David Braben's been on record saying it's around. Michael Brooks has talked about it. Neither of them have been very visible in the meta of Elite Dangerous recently, but they're busy guys and they've got a company to run, so this isn't the only thing they do. There's a massive thread. I should give a shout out actually. There's a massive thread on the Elite Dangerous forums, which I've spent many times sort of wandering through, occasionally saying things. There are lots and lots of theory crafting going on in by commanders in that thread. So that is a worthwhile thing to go and investigate yourself. So there's lots and lots of theories about Raxxla in there. There are a couple of bits in there that I should put to rest because I had written about Raxxla myself prior to Elite Dangerous coming out, and a few people have stumbled across this online and wondered, what if I found a clue? And I'm afraid you haven't. I wrote a story called Mutabilis, which is Latin for change, in about 2008, long before Elite Dangerous was a thing. we called it Elite 4 back then. So Mutabilis is a fan fiction story that I wrote, and I placed theory, a bit like we do now, that Raxxla can't be all that far away from, home, if you like. And I wrote a story called Mutabilis, which basically made Raxxla sort of portal that moved location. One of the reasons it was secret for so long is it isn't always in the same place. This is my headcanon, so this is not canon. And what that meant was that I actually placed it in orbit around Lave as a moon, kind of hiding in plain sight, which I thought was a thing. And you can go and read. You can go and find it online if you type Drew Wagar Elite Fanfiction Mutabilis. I'll type the name of the book in the chat so you can like that. There you go. If you find that book, you will you can read a story about Raxxla in an Elite universe, but it's not canon. Okay, my fanfiction stuff very much wasn't canon, but a few people have stumbled across it since, and of course, unfortunately, it all gets mixed into the myth and the legend that is Raxxla. And the problem is also that parts of the Lave system are now permit locked, which of course people will add 2 and 2 together and get 5, and all that sort of stuff. So, but the story of Lave being the location of Raxxla is something that I invented before Elite Dangerous was a thing, and I'm pretty sure is a complete red herring. Nothing to do with the actual Raxxla, wherever it may be in Elite Dangerous. So that that just to kind of put that one aside. It wouldn't be the first time Frontier have taken your fan-made lore stuff without telling you. Well, I don't really want to get into that. We talked about hyperspace a little bit the other week, and yes, so a few things have got you can see previous videos for that. There is some slight sort of stuff, and the problem with the internet is things get shafted around, and I don't mind people borrowing my stuff and using it to enjoy and have fun in Elite Dangerous. That's absolutely fine. That's kind of I think that's perfectly reciprocal way of doing things. But what it does mean is that keeping track of what's actually canon is virtually impossible, because some of the stuff in here is in the game today. Some of it isn't. Some of it's been retconned. Now I can tell you that I've got documents that I've used for. Where's my little notepad? There we go. Documents that reference Raxxla not being mentioned until about the year 2800. Okay, much later, which contradicts what's said in the Codex about the year 2296. Now, if Raxxla doesn't turn up into the year 2800, that's a totally different kettle of fish, because we could have gone much further into space. Okay, stuff like that is has stuff been changed? Has the lore been curated correctly across the years? And the answer to that is no, it hasn't. There are things that have been changed in the lore because of gameplay. Okay, now people like me who take the lore very, very seriously and enjoy working out the dates and trying to connect things up find that really irritating. Okay, and so that's just me. Some people will go, Drew, it's a game. Drew, it's a game. It doesn't matter. It's only a game. And you just go, well, gameplay trumps lore. Well, I get that. Okay, I get that. But what it does mean is that if you are interested in kind of digging into the lore, you keep bumping up against places where you think you might have found a connection, but you may have just found a retcon. And that makes it really, really hard to try and connect things up. Okay. Multi-crew and FTL is a good one, because in the game we see that we've got the ability to jump into our ship launch fighters. Okay, we can fly them around, and they are done by something called telepresence. And telepresence also seems to be the way that we can jump into other commander ships. And the problem with that is it works anywhere in the galaxy. And it's called telepresence. And the thing about that is that in the Elite lore, it's very clear that there is no FTL communication at high bandwidth. There's some low bandwidth FTL communication which you can use for text transfers, and that's it, which kind of was Frontier's way of explaining how the interstellar comms worked on the panel. the telepresence definitely was against the law when it first came out, and then telepresence was in the game, so obviously it was canon, okay, which sort of broke the law. It's a little, well, where did that come from? And that's sort of the problem, okay? So gameplay, yes, it trumps. I get that, right? We all get that because we want to have a fun game, and if you want to have multi-crew, whatever you think of multi-crew, I had some fun with it in the early days. I don't play it now because I haven't really got anyone to play with. But it was kind of fun. You could jump into each other's ships and arse about and do things together. That's okay. Same with the wings, really. But from a lore perspective, in my opinion, what they should have done is gone. It's just a gameplay thing. It's not. It doesn't really happen in the lore. It's just a gameplay convenience. And we'd all gone, yeah, fine, yeah, I can get that, right? But because they called it telepresence and they put it in as a thing, then us lore heads had to sort of like try and refactor that and go, well, what does that mean? Does that mean FTL comms are available now? Because the amount of data transfer you need to send a hologrammatic person to a long distance like that is insanely large, okay? Which sort of detracts from the lore. And that's the sort of process you keep going through when you look at gameplay things that are put in which claim to be lore based, but they aren't really. And that sort of stuff gets confusing quite fast. So that's a problem. Maybe it's tachyons. There you go. That's a good one. But then you get into kind of like trying to rationalise things, and that's where it gets really, really hard work. Because then you get, if they can do that, why can't they do this? So a classic one with telepresence, for example, is, well, why bother going out in spaceships at all? Why bother risking lives? Okay. By going out in a spaceship when you can why don't you just sit on a space station and telepresence to a remote controlled ship? Why do ships have people on them at all? Why aren't they just fully automated and you telepresence to your ship and go out and explore the galaxy that way? So stuff, you've got to be a bit careful there because stuff starts to unravel if you're not too careful. So that's the balance between lore and gameplay that is very hard to get. But those are the sort of things. Now the problem that leaves us with is that stuff about Raxxla and stuff about the Dark Wheel is contradictory in many places. We kind of have it's a location, it's a planet, it's a ghost planet, it's a gateway. There's the Umpholus Rift, okay, mentioned as well. Let me show you that one. That's another thing that's in here. Codex, I think it's under Raxxla. It talks about El Dorado and stuff. Right, here we go. Several versions of the Raxxla story mention an alien artifact. Okay, so there's another thing, alien artifact. The Umphalos Rift, described as a gateway or tunnel through which parallel universes can be accessed. Okay, so that's harking back again to the original description in the Elite novel, The Dark Wheel, about a gateway to another dimension and okay. As a gateway or tunnel through which parallel universes can be accessed. But these details were shown later to bear a striking resemblance to this children's story Princess Astrophel and the Spiraling Stars, which sounds like a great novel. I really want to read the story of Princess Astrophel and the Spiraling Stars. And apparently that lost credibility. So undaunted some Raxxla seekers insist the stories all had cunning, concealed facts about the mysterious locale in the book. So the way that reads is almost like the author of this article, who may be in the lore person, or it may be Frontier, basically downplaying Dark Wheel and Raxxla. There's a real Sonic called Astrophel and Stella. Is there? Okay, well that's interesting. I should write it. Astrophel and the Spiraling Stars. So Stella's star, you're quite right. So that's interesting. So is that Frontier's way of basically saying, yes, we acknowledge that this existed, but we're actually sort of saying, actually, it's just a dream, it's just a story, it's just a myth? Or is this, but why is it in the Codex? Okay, why is it in the Codex? So it's difficult. Okay, it's difficult to establish what is correct. So in summary of all that, so we've got a date in the Codex for when Raxxla appears, which is quite early, 2296. There are other dates in the lore which have popped up in different places as well, much later dates. So, but we had to go with the one from the Codex because that seems to be the one that's most justified. The Codex dates very, very early, which means humanity can't have spread that far, a few hundred light years at best. So we should based on that, be able to find Raxxla relatively straightforwardly. But we've searched and we've not found it, okay? But there don't seem to be any clues, and Michael Brooks has been on record saying there aren't any. You won't get any clues. But it has to be not too far away if that date is correct. There's this legend of the Omphalos Rift, which may be a myth, but it does tie up quite closely with the original description of the planet from the Dark Wheel book, which is a gateway to other universes, an alien construct, and so on and so forth. So that's definitely riffing off that. The Dark Wheel is entwined with Raxxla. Dark Wheel are one of two things: either they have found Raxxla and they're guarding it, stopping other people from getting to it, or they're still looking for the Dark Wheel. Sorry, they're looking for Raxxla, and you, in order to join them, you have to prove your worth in some strange fashion. Felicity Farseer is on record in the game as saying that she believes in the Dark Wheel, that they exist. They've been around for a long time as well. They're kind of in this "don't call us, we'll call you" thing. They're supposed to have a starport around the 8th moon of a gas giant, and they appear in 3300 in Shinatra Desert. And that, my friends, is about all we actually factor in. For a myth and a legend that has been so fundamental to Elite and now Elite Dangerous, what I've told you is pretty much all we know. This is what's so frustrating about this particular mission. This part of the lore is that there is virtually no information at all for us to go on. Nothing concrete, other than we've been told in the meta around it that, keep searching. David Brabe and Michael Brooks. That is there. Now, I wondered, and people have checked this, so I think this one is a dead end, but I wondered originally whether or not the old worlds, because again, going back to that galaxy map, here, we can see that Soontill and the other planets in here, like Lave and so on and so forth, which are now lost because I've gone too far out. I've got too many planets on the screen. But anyway, let's just search for Lave. There we go. The old worlds are there. There we go. And then Shinatra Desert is there, and Sol is there. So this is the area. There's Felicity Farseer, for example, for Indesi. I think Indesi chooses it. So this is the, if it's anywhere, I think Raxxla has to be in this kind of this zone. I would guess. This is the area in which stuff kind of happens, and it's sort of centered around these old worlds. Now, I had a theory that maybe Frontier were doing something clever with the original game lore, because Raxxla exists in the original Elite. It doesn't exist in the middle two games. It has appeared in Elite Dangerous. Now, the worlds that are concerned with the original game are pretty much here. There are a few, however, as I mentioned the other week, that are outside that kind of boundary. So here's one. It's a little bit lower down, Tianve, which is a system from the original game. Now, I've been there and checked it out, and there doesn't seem to be anything particularly unusual about it, but I remember thinking it's a bit of an odd inclusion. Why would you put that one in? And there are a few other systems from the original Elite that have sporadically appeared, scattered around the galactic map in Elite Dangerous. Now, I know people have checked this out, so it is. It seems to be a dead end, which is a shame, really, because it would have been quite a good way to do it. But there are a few original systems from the original Elite scattered around the Elite Dangerous map, and I was kind of hoping that maybe if you assembled that information in some weird and wonderful way, then maybe that would trigger something and lead you on to the next. And that's the theory I was working on, kind of privately actually, because I kind of thought, well, maybe I can do that, but it didn't come to anything. But I can imagine it working in that sort of fashion. Now, I do not know, and I promise you, I do not know anything about Raxxla. any more than you guys do. It was off limits for the writers. It's been off limits ever since. I don't have any privileged position now. I'm just interested to talk about this sort of stuff, and that's why I'm doing this law talk. But if it is in the game, and David Braben's been on record a few times saying, well, players don't necessarily always play the game that way we expect them to, and maybe they haven't done some of the things that we expect them to do either. It does make me wonder if there's a way of triggering something that we've all missed, but it's, what that could be, I do not know. But I'm still of the opinion that, although this is still a vast area of space, whatever Raxxla is, I think it has to be in this zone in some fashion. I don't think, you look at the size of the galaxy, and we're talking about 400 billion stars. I mean, if it's randomly out there somewhere, we're never going to find it, are we? Right? It's impossible. I mean, what percentage of the galaxy have we explored now? Have we got to 1% yet? It can't be much. Or is it 0.01? I don't know what it is, but if it's just randomly out there somewhere, then we've got no hope in hell of finding it, unless there are some clues, and we've just been told there aren't any clues. So the meta game theory, okay, so stepping out of the game again, 0.042%, okay, as of December, so not even 0.1, right? So that's insane. So we're not going to find it that way. A brute force search of every star system in the game is not going to happen. So I don't know. One thing I can help you dismiss is that the stuff that I did, so this sector of the galaxy out here, the Formidine Rift, okay, which I think is, no, this one here, this is the Formidine Rift. This is not Raxxla, okay? This is not Raxxla at all. What I wrote here about the Formidine Rift, and we'll get to that, that's an upcoming law stream, okay, is a mystery that I worked on with Michael Brooks in the early days of Elite Dangerous. I put it in my book, obviously, and we put it in the game to do various stuff, and we played around with it in the first 3 years of the Elite Dangerous story. That is not Raxxla. It's not connected to Raxxla, at least as far as I'm aware. It is not Salome, whilst she had some connections in the lore to the Dark Wheel, as did Luco, who's one of her companions. They were kind of operating very much on the periphery of the Dark Wheel, and Salome does not have, as far as I'm aware, any connection to Raxxla. So you can separate those two, okay? So that's, I think it's fair to say, I'm pretty sure that the Formidine Rift and all the stuff that's associated with that in the lore is not the Raxxla story. Okay, it's not. They're not connected in any meaningful way. So you don't need to conflate those two. The Formidine Rift, as you can see, is a place on the galactic map here, of which there's a story associated with. Okay, but it's not Raxxla. It's not the Dark Wheel. And that's quite old stuff now as well. Okay, now the way that's got slightly confused. Prob BFC has made the point that the name of the group that Salome got involved in is called the Children of Raxxla. Now, I didn't have any control over the name of that group that was set up. It was a player group way back in the day, still exists. Player group way back in the day. Some very cool guys who called themselves that because I'm guessing it sounded cool. No, that's the name they had. Now they adopted Salome as a figurehead, and that's where the Salome Raxxla connection seems to have come from. But the children of Raxxla are arguably not connected with the real Raxxla, although they probably would be claiming to be searching for Raxxla as well as the Dark Wheel in the lore, which is stuff that players are doing. So. But there's no direct connection between Salome and my story, the Formidine Rift and Raxxla, as far as I'm aware, unless Frontier's done something weird and wonderful. So that one we can probably put to bed. I think Raxxla and the Dark Wheel are separate. They're sort of, in the lore, they're Frontier-only content. And that's kind of it, okay? I can't tell you much more about it, because that is all that we've been able to dig up. We have the original Dark Wheel novella. We have some clues about it being a planet, an alien portal, a gateway of some kind. We have unconfirmed reports that it's been travelled through, but never been able to establish that with any veracity. There are bits and pieces of the original Elite map embedded in the universe of Elite Dangerous. They're definitely worth checking out because there are a few little odds and sods out there which are interesting from a perspective of that, but nothing that seems to really clarify a Raxxla connection. Eramis Camsel. Hello, Commander Eramis. Good to see you. Thank you very much for turning up. So children of Raxxla are everywhere Raxxla is mentioned. Well, the problem with that, of course, is an internet search will pick that up because there's probably been more recent articles about the children of Raxxla than there has actually about Raxxla on its own. And separating things on the internet is sometimes quite hard from a search to. And there's confusion. I've played with it, okay, because the Dark Wheel as an organisation is something that it's very easy to associate yourself with, even if you're not the Dark Wheel. So these things can actually be connected to each other. So where does that leave us? Okay, we should really summarise where we've got to. Okay, so what do we know? Okay, we know the original game had the legend of the Dark Wheel. It also had the legend of Raxxla in it, and it's a location, it's a place. Okay, people are trying to find it. What does that mean in Elite Dangerous? Well, it shows up in the Codex. The Codex gives us some facts, or at least it gives us some reference facts. It tells us that Raxxla is ancient. Okay, it's over 1,000 years old. It is mentioned in the Codex specifically, as is the Dark Wheel. There's not much detail there, not much that we can go and refer to. There is a minor faction in the Shinatra Desert system, which is the Dark Wheel, who used to give out some interesting missions. We have Soontill, which is indirectly connected to Raxxla, but is connected in the lore to some of the characters who went searching for Raxxla. That does exist. That's a real place, and we're there literally this evening. Outside of the game, David Braben has gone on record, face to face with me and Frontier Stream, saying that Raxxla is a thing. Michael Brooks has been on record saying there will be no clues, and it's a journey everyone commander has to take, which sort of maybe makes you think that it's it's something that you need to qualify for, which kind of goes back to that. Do you need to be elite to get to it? So all of those things are possibilities. Is it really in the game? I don't know. Can it possibly, after all these years and all this speculation and all these streams and things like what I'm doing this evening, match up to what we all hope it could be? A fantastic myth and legend. Or is it one of those things that will never be answered because the answer could never be as good as we think it could be? So Cleonimus, you're referring to another, it's another myth about it. It's somebody's supposed to pass through it, but nobody is able to point at the original reference to that. A key that's also a door. So these have all been clues that have been. All we can take from it is it appears to be a place. It appears to be some sort of gateway to somewhere else. Now it could be that it's going to be unlocked at some future point in the game. Maybe it's a placeholder in the lore to something. Some new technology that comes on, because new technology can be invented. Okay, so we've seen things like the Guardians. Okay, some of their stuff transcends what we can do as humans, and some of the stuff that the Thargoids can do transcends what we can do as humanity in the game. So there are more advanced technologies out there. In Galnet, there was all sorts of weird and stuff that Halsey experienced, like visions of beyond, humanity and stuff, and all those sort of things. And in the original game, I forgot this. In the original game, there was the concept of galactic hyperspace. And I'll read you from the manual. This is where it talks about it, and it could just be that this is something that Frontier might riff on in the future. Let me see if I can find the reference. So one of the things that you could buy was an intergalactic hyperdrive unit. it says here, the intergalactic hyperdrive is attainable only from planets at tech level 10 or higher, can only be used once. Whilst a number of manufacturers have supported a whole range of these motors, it's recommended you remain loyal to the standard one that provides the standard hyperspace transit drives. Okay, so it just tells you how you can buy one. But what does it say here? Under the, let me just put it onto the full screen, because we checked this out, and this is an interesting little law detail, which may have been retconned, we don't know, but it is in the law. It is saying here, under the navigation and flying section, okay, navigation, and it does mention here, life in the 8 galaxies. I don't know if you can see that. Life in the 8 galaxies is a question of fine balance. And on the next page, it shows you a picture of the starting galaxy, which obviously, because it was 8-bit, only had 256 stars in it. But it does say here, apart from the shine on the screen, just wait for that to focus, there are 8 galaxies, of which this is one, and over 250 recognized planets in each galaxy. So massive universe contains very little that's completely predictable and offers infinite opportunities for adventure. Now that's possibly just a bit of flavor text from the original manual, but it talks about galaxies. Okay. Now, Frontier could riff on that and go hyperspace travel long distance to other galaxies is a possibility. Okay.
Ready to engage.
Will they do that? I can't tell you. But if they want to they want to justify the Raxxla myth as a portal and a gateway and a location, all those kind of bits and pieces. That would be a cool way to do it, right? Maybe it could be a mechanism that transports you to Andromeda or the Magellanic Clouds or something, or some other location, or kind of wormhole across the galaxy or something, which is, this is a sci-fi computer game, that's a sci-fi trope, okay? We've seen that in, Babylon 5, we've seen it in Voyager, we've seen it in, all sorts of different things, Deep Space Nine, wormholes across the galaxy, across the universe are a thing in sci-fi, so, but that's a way I can imagine that it might be done. Of course, you'd have to have some gameplay associated with it. I'm not quite sure what that would be, because one procedurally generated galaxy is very much like another, isn't it? But we have been told by people that it's a thing. Is there a way to go find it? Not that I'm aware of. All we have is the entries in the codex and the old original law, and we're starved for clues. Okay, we're starved for clues. Yeah, Malik, I agree with you on that. If you replace galaxies with sectors and think about when you're into game release, it make more sense. That's how I've always played it in my head, actually, that they were sectors of the same galaxy. But that isn't actually what the manual states. They are called galactic charts in the game, but they're referred to as galaxies in the manual. It may just be a thing. But it's a way that Frontier could use to talk about Raxxla as a gateway to somewhere else. So, is it in the game? We've been assured it is. Have we got any evidence it's in the game? Not really. No, we don't. We just have the codex entries. We don't have anything else, which is frustrating. Is there a way for us to go and check things out? No, there isn't. There's nowhere to start. There's nowhere to stop. We've got the original core worlds, Lave and so on. We have places like Soontill. We have places like Teorge. We have in the codex that the time period is early, 2296, which means that humanity shouldn't have ever go far, because this is pre-empire, pre-alliance, massive expansion of humanity out into galaxies. So, and that's it. That is the mystery. The mystery started in 1984. It's still here today, and it's still in the game because it mentions it in Elite Dangerous. And more than that, it remains a mystery. Is it out there? Will somebody find it? I really can't tell you. I really hope it is, because I think it's an awesome thing to have a mystery for such a long length of time. As a lore item, it is endlessly fascinating, because it's like, well, 34 years on, and we're still talking about this. So, you know, those of you who've only recently come to Elite Dangerous, this mystery's been in the game for 34 years and hasn't been clarified yet. It dates back that far, and there aren't many genres or games or anything really that has a mystery that is that long. But we know vanishingly little about it, and what we do know is confused and things. So hopefully this stream has clarified a little bit about what is known and what isn't known, and what is known is very, very little. Sorry, 36. I can't even count. Thank you, Stephen. We really don't know a great deal, but it dates from the original game. It hasn't been clarified, but it is referenced in Elite Dangerous, so it's still in the codex, so it's still in the game as far as I'm concerned. But I would definitely recommend checking into the codex again once the Fleet Carriers goes live, because that may be interesting. How many people are in the search sphere? It's still a lot. Okay, let's go back to the let's go back here for a moment. It's still a lot. So even if we go back to Lave, which is kind of where the lore starts, you know, from the perspective of the game, even if we're talking about Lave to there's Sol to Lave, Soontill is arguably in kind of the range. So we're in Soontill now. If we go to Sol is 280 light years away from from Soontill to Sol there, 280 light years. That means we've got a sphere radius 280 light years. Somebody were to do the maths in terms of what area that is. That's a lot of space still. So even if Raxxla is within a sphere of, let's say, radius 300 light years, which seems reasonable given the lore information we have, that's still a massive amount of space. It's pretty much I think we can probably say it probably is the bubble, pretty much, because how far does the bubble extend? So the bubble sort of stops around about there, so that it's either in the current bubble or just beyond it, I would say, would be a sensible search location. So we're talking about the entire bubble and a bit more, that's the area of space where I would think Raxxla would have to be located. So so there we are. Pierhead's worked out it's about 19,600. So it's not an impossible amount of space, but it's a lot. And there are lots of. That's a very good point, Francis Fjord Capola. Is that there are clues now? Has Frontier taken clues from the original novella and used them in the location of Raxxla? Is it a place that we can find? Is it currently closed off? I don't know. There are permit locks in the bubble. Polaris is a really good example, which is more likely something to do with the Thargoids, but it is actually, it's just outside the bubble. Look at that, in sort of the opposite direction, and it is a permit locked system requiring the Polaris system permit, for which there seems to be no way to get it. So there are places like that in the bubble which are locked off for whatever reason. Maybe mapping permit locked areas in the bubble is a good thing. We need to have a definitive thing, and some of these things have already been tried on the quest for Raxxla, which I think runs to several hundred pages. It's worth checking through that to see if anybody has already had the idea that you've had, because it may well have been investigated. People have been trying this for some years. Okay, inside Elite Dangerous, I've gone through it. I've gone through everything I can think of, and I haven't found anything myself. I thought maybe the core worlds in the original game would be the clue, and I haven't found anything related to them. 800 pages, says Jay Mundo. There we go. So it's a lot of tinfoiling, as we call it, has been done around this, and because people are interested in this mystery, but we haven't got any answers yet. So all I can say is that to go back to the guy who invented this, Robert Holdstock, he sadly passed away in the year 2012. One of the big regrets of my life, never got to meet him. I think he'd be kind of delighted that his little mystery that he embedded in a book in 1984 was still being debated by people in the year 2020. Decades after he wrote it, and almost a decade after he sadly passed on. So there's a bit of organisation that could be done here. I think we almost need a really good program plan of activity to manage the quest for Raxxla. Now, maybe somebody needs to put Trello boards together and all sorts of stuff like that, because it's very difficult to separate what's been done, what hasn't been done in terms of searching for Raxxla and stuff. What I can't tell you is whether it's worth doing. I would so love to be kind of in the know on this one, to say, yeah, actually Raxxla, when you find out about it, it's going to be so amazing, and yeah, you've just gone straight past it, but I can't. Yeah, but I'm not in a privileged position with Raxxla at all. I don't know, but there are anomalies in the bubble. There are permit locks. There are little clues. There are bits of flavor text embedded in the description of systems. All that sort of stuff. Maybe, and as Francis says, maybe it's the journey that matters. Maybe the quest is just the point, which is a bit naff, but I could kind of see it. And maybe Frontiers looked at it and gone, it's impossible to satisfy the fans on this one. And maybe they're never ever going to answer it. We're always going to be speculating for it. It's a bit like an episode of Lost. You remember the TV series Lost, where it was really, really exciting and interesting. There was never any resolution to it, was there? Which meant you just sort of slowly went insane watching that show. And the writers didn't know where they were going, which was a sort of very, very odd way of writing a TV show. But that was a thing. Okay, Raxxla could be like that. I don't know. I really enjoyed Lost, particularly early on, and then at some point, and I think about the third season, I twigged. My writer's brain went, "These guys don't know where they're going." So I don't know. The truth is, I don't know on this one. I would love there to be a quest that we could all be involved in, and some complicated way of putting all sorts of things together to assemble a massive jigsaw of things that ultimately opens Raxxla, and we go, wow, it's a portal to goodness knows where. I don't know. Andy Pipkin says FDev said that Galnot will return once they get the FC update kind of out of the way. FC update will be introduced with a new Galnot. I hadn't heard that. Okay, so that's good. Okay, so stuff will happen. Yes. Phoenix Nevada sounds like the end of Battlestar Galactica. Yeah, all this has happened before. All of this will happen again. So sometimes the writing runs out. Now I don't know. I'm not sure. I really don't know. And that's all I can really do in summary on this one, I'm afraid. So I hope that's been entertaining. We obviously won't have got any further forward with Raxxla, and I'm hoping that none of you expected to, because there's no way to go forward on it. I've given you as much of the background to it as I know, the context of where it's come from, what we have found in the game, the potential for what Raxxla could be, and all those kind of things as well. So that's the mystery. So for those of you who come new to this game, don't know about the previous game, the mystery stems back 36 years, and that's why it's still so compelling to us now. I've been a player of the game since 1984. I'm still playing it today, and the Raxxla mystery is, still tickles the grey matter. It's a fascinating thing. But there we go. Right, so thank you very much for joining me on the Law Tour this evening. I'll put it up on YouTube in the next 24 hours or so if you want to watch it, in case you had any kind of streaming latency issues, all that kind of good stuff. And next week, I think we're Thargoids, aren't we? Are we Thargoids in Imra next week? I'm just gonna, I can't remember. Our covering. Law Tour, hang on a minute, let me just go look it up. It's far quicker to Google yourself nowadays than it is to look up your own stuff. Law Tour next week is... Yes, first contact with the Thargoids. So we get to talk about the Thargoids, we get to talk about Imra. So keep an eye out for that. And we'll go off and talk about where did the Thongoids come from, what's their beef with us, and all that kind of interesting stuff. So that's going to be quite good fun too. So hopefully I'll see you all then. Thank you very much. I play a little bit of Stellaris on Friday, so if you want to join me tomorrow afternoon, we can do a bit of Stellaris. And on Saturday, I'm currently engaged in a playthrough of the original Elite game on the ZX Spectrum. So if you do want to see the original Elite in action, then join me on Saturday for my original Elite stream. And what I'm trying to do there is trigger the original missions for the Elite version, because they've never been captured on the internet before, and I want to capture them out of pure curiosity, really. And we're still finding the odd new thing out about the original game as we go along in there as well. So there we go. So thank you for your company. Right on, Commanders, and 07, of course. You look after yourselves. Have a fantastic rest of the week, and have a very, very good weekend. If I don't see you before next week, take care of yourselves. Fly safe. Of course, if you can't fly safe, you fly dangerous, which I think I've just pinched from Live Radio, so apologies for that. Hopefully they'll forgive me as well. But it's been good. I appreciate your company tonight. Right on. I will see you all soon. Take care now. Bye bye.
So there we have it. Interesting stuff yet again by the man himself. Yeah, some very interesting things. A lot of which I've already tried. Some of it. Does it really exist? I hope so. I will keep searching for it. Because one, it's something to do. It's like believing in Santa. You know, when you're a kid, you believe in Santa, and even when you get to that age where you find out he's actually not real, you somehow feel, yeah, I wish he was. But you know, so maybe Raxxla is the Frontier Development equivalent of Santa, and he's reeling the imagination of children everywhere, hence the children of Raxxla. Right folks, thanks for watching. We'll be back next week with the Law Tour next week, and please like, share, subscribe, leave any comments underneath as usual, and subscribe, hit the logo in the top left corner, and to see the other videos in the Elite Dangerous playlist, hit the logo in the top right. Thanks for watching folks. Taddy bye.